Hi. It's been almost 2 years to the day since I last made a YouTube video, and despite the fact that I have a fabulous new haircut and a wonderful new sense of style, I am still incredibly awkward whenever I have to film anything. The indisputably most important thing to have happened in the past 2 years is that I turned 18 just last month, which means that I can finally vote. I've had the plan to make and wear a suffragette outfit when I go vote for the first time for a long time, basically ever since I started sewing. It was originally going to be much more Edwardian, but as you can probably see in the thumbnail, the outfit turned much more into a 1910s ensemble because I only relatively recently discovered the absolute wonder that is late 1910s fashion. This ensemble consists of a corset, which I made using the Rilla corset pattern from Screw Patterns, the Elsie blouse by Wearing History, and a self-drafted pleated skirt that I made following a video by Mountain Fiber. I started this project with the skirt. I basically had just enough fabric, so it was really nice to be able to make something out of fabric and basically have no leftovers. I measured the front and back pieces and sewed them together using flat felled seams, leaving one side partially open to make room for the placket. Next, I basted a hip line about 6.5 inches down from the top of my skirt. I sewed the placket and added hooks and eyes as closures. For many hours, I futzed around with the pleats until they fit my waist measurement, neglecting to do any sort of pleat math because I thought that would be too hard, although repleating the skirt several times was a chore in and of itself. Once I was happy with my pleats, I basted them in place and stay stitched them about 1/2 inch from the top. I top stitched all of the pleats down to the hip line and finished the hem by hand. I cut out pieces for the belt and pockets and sewed them as far as I could until I needed to add buttons. With that, the general skirt construction was mostly complete because I opted not to use an interior waistband because I didn't really understand how they worked at the time and there was no lining. I moved on to the blouse, which I had already made a mock-up of a couple weeks earlier. If I'm being honest, there was lots of footage of me sewing randomly shaped white pieces together and I'm not really sure which is which, so I will narrate the blouse construction as best I can. I gathered the front piece and sewed the shoulder seams. I hemmed the opposite sides of the facing and attached them to the front of the blouse. Then I sewed the underarm seams using flat felled seams like I'd used in the shoulder seams, and sewed and attached the collar. I found the collar to be the most challenging part of this pattern, but luckily the Wearing History YouTube channel has a tutorial for how to attach the collar. I sewed the sleeves, choosing the long ones because I had made the short ones in my mock-up, and attached the lap to the bottom edge. This part was definitely also finicky and it didn't come out as pretty as I'd wanted it to, but I think it serves its purpose and it's hard to see on the finished product. I attached cuffs, choosing the plainest option, and set the blouse aside once the only thing to do was make buttonholes and attach the buttons. I haven't added any buttons to the front of the blouse or to the cuffs. And I haven't added the pockets or the second piece of the belt, which will cover this flap where the hooks and eyes connect, because I'm waiting to buy nicer antique buttons at an antique fair eventually. But it's already coming together and I think it looks really nice. At said antiques fair, I bought these really nice antique buttons for the blouse but could not find any for the skirt, so I just bought some at my local craft store. I sewed the buttons on the skirt onto the belt and decorations to the pockets and attached the pockets by top stitching. Once the skirt and blouse were complete, it was time to move on to the corset. The corset was definitely the part of the project I was most excited about, but I was also really nervous because the only other structural garment I've made are a pair of stays, and they didn't come out very well. I inserted the busk to the front panels and the grommets to the back. Then I machine basted all of the panels together and tried them on for fit. I made the boning and the bias tape from some cotton I had left over from the blouse. The instructions say to sew all of the boning channels from the right side, but that seemed really hard and a recipe for lots of seam unpicking, so I sewed the middle of the boning channels from the right side and the sides of the boning channels from the inside. I bound the top and bottom edges and attached some lace for decoration. And with that, the corset was basically finished. I found the construction of the corset relatively simple. It was just that a lot of steps, like cutting and filing the boning, making boning channels, sewing boning channels, took a lot of time. Finally, I ripped the ribbon off this old hat and retrimmed it with some flowers and some ribbon. And the outfit was done. So, here it is. Apologies for the egregiously 90s hair. I've been giving my hair a little bit of a break from rollers. Overall, I'm really happy with it. I think the blouse came out really well. The pattern itself isn't that difficult to put together, but the instructions were a little bit hard to follow. But there are plenty of videos online, so it was pretty easy to figure out how to put the whole blouse together. I think the skirt also came out pretty nice. The placket could be a little bit flatter, and the line of the hem fold up is still a little bit visible from the right side. But overall, I think it came out really nice. I'm really happy with the pockets. I think they're a nice size. And for a two-piece rectangular skirt, I think it has a pretty nice swoosh. I am exceptionally pleased with how the corset came out. I honestly think it's probably one of the best things I've ever made, and I'm really glad I took my time with it. As you can see, it has a little bit of wrinkling in the waist area because I put the waist stay a little bit too high, but that's something I can always fix in the future. I think it gives a really nice shape, and I'm really glad that the pattern had 2 different hip sizes. I definitely think it's a good pattern to choose if you are making a first foray into corset making. Thank you so much for watching, and take this video as a sign that if you are not registered to vote and eligible to vote, that you should go register to vote so that you can go vote, because democracy only works when everybody participates.